Yeah, I am. Can you hear me? I just been waiting for people to show up. Um, we can do a couple things. We can talk about this communist takeover presentation that I have showing here, or we can maybe go through a citizenship presentation. The communist takeover one has not been done previously. Citizenship has been done previously. Another alternative is I've been reading The Law of Nations by Vattel, and we could go through that. That is not a presentation, though. It would just be going through the actual book and reading it together. And anybody have questions on it? Obviously, we're not going to get through the whole thing. It's 500 pages, but I think that people need to understand. I was thinking about actually making a video on it, but you know, whether I put it into PowerPoint presentation with highlights, or whether we just go through and read the book, it's hard to say. But anyways, I think that it's some good information for how proper government is supposed to operate, and so anyways, that's another alternative. So I'm just waiting for some people to show up and see what everybody wants to do, and we'll take it from there. And that's why you're not hearing anything, because I'm not saying anything. Can you hear me now? Please give me a thumbs up if you can hear me now. Can anybody hear me? Can anybody hear me? Can they see the? Looks like somebody's seeing it, I think. I'm trying a different thing to get access. I'm actually using my phone as a hotspot, which should give me hopefully better internet. Okay, sounds like I've got sound. Does anybody have any preferences on whether we want to do this communist takeover video presentation that I've got here? Has never been seen before, or we could do a citizenship presentation, go over citizenship, or we could go through the Law of Nations by Vattel, or at least start on it. Anybody have any preferences? Anybody have any preferences about what we go through? If not, I think I might just start going through the Law of Nations by Vattel, if nobody has any preferences talk about myself. Well, this is Sovereignty International Northeast Private Information Share. This is the basic weekend, the basic training weekend, where we talk about basic stuff. Next weekend will be the advanced training weekend, where we talk about some stuff that I'm doing that is a little bit different and requires some more advanced knowledge, I guess you might say. So next weekend we'll be talking about that. I did. I do remember growing up in Canada. Yes, that's true. I claimed American nationality because my mother is American, and I've been living down here in Texas and Arizona, are my two favorite states to live in. And in Texas, I am involved with the Republic of Texas. Okay, so someone says no preference. That's good. Anyways, I talk about that in my asserting sovereignty video. There's several of them I have up there. I've got a website, sovereigntyinternational.fyi, and on there as links to the YouTube videos, to all of my YouTube videos, and not all of them, but most of them, organized by topics. I've also written a book recently called Trump, A True American Patriot, or Not. And I guess I leave it up to whoever the reader is to decide whether he's a true patriot or not. And I just go through the law and explain the law about who the deep state is, where they come from, how they got there, and all the stuff that's going on that Trump is having to deal with. And that's where this law of nations might come in useful too. Yeah, naturalized is, I'm not sure if I would do that even if I had the opportunity. I claimed it because my mother's American. But actually, I don't know. I think there's ways of dealing with it. It's a little bit different than if you're not. If you're born. See, because I was born in Canada, under the 14th Amendment, I tell them that it's impossible for me to be a U.S. citizen because under the 14th Amendment, you have to be born or naturalized. And I wasn't neither. So that's a problem for them. I wasn't born or naturalized. I claimed it. I was given, whether I was born in the United States, you got to be born in the jurisdiction of the United States. And I was born in Alberta. And and I wasn't naturalized. So that's a problem. Anyways, next week we'll talk about, among other things, we'll talk about my nasty grams. Bar grievances. I think bar grievances is probably the single most important thing that you can do when you're dealing with any government official. There's always a bar member that's behind them, that's behind all the stuff that's happening. And so you just file bar grievances against them. I file bar grievances against the prosecutors. I file bar grievances against the district attorney. I filed bar grievances against anybody. I sent in yesterday they were asking me to have sample bar grievances below the videos, and so I just put some up there today. I uploaded them to Google Docs, and there's a link below the YouTube videos where you can find them if you want to look at them. Those are actual ones that I filed. Now they dismiss them all, and I automatically appeal them and go through their process. And it ultimately gets dismissed. But um, you can, I mean, that Roman cult Sestake trust is out there, and there's nothing you can do about that I know about. And but it's not yours; it's a fraud. And so that's to me, that's my attitude. I don't certify the birth certificate. I think that's like a major mistake. The birth certificate falls under international law. It's all international law, and that's why reading the Law of Nations might be useful. Although there's no way we'd get through the whole thing, but we'd certainly get through a fair amount of it. And I think that it would start giving people an idea on the proper role of government, and because it was written in 1750s by Vattel, and the founding fathers, all of them were reading that thing, and the Constitution is patterned after it. If you once you read that, I haven't read the whole thing. I'm on page. Let me look here. I'm on page 45. Still got a long ways to go. It's got 550 pages. So there's a long ways to go, and I highlight certain things as I see them, and that I think are worth remembering. But so it's quite interesting, and helps about common law, about a country, about a nation, what is required for a nation, and so that's one thing that we could do, or we could do the communist takeover, or we could do a presentation on citizenship or something like that. Um, and I'll leave it up to you. I always, on the first weekend, and even in the second weekend, when I have the advanced training, I'll usually have some stuff that I've been doing, but then I'll ask everybody, what does everybody want to talk about? I don't. I used to have some stuff prepared. I did that before, and everybody wanted to talk about something else. So I gave up on that idea. Well, none of the videos have sample grievances. The previous videos we did yesterday and Friday have sample videos below their actual videos, actual grievances that I filed, and they're below in the video, not the comments, but in the below the video. I'm not sure what they call that. On YouTube, where you have the more information below the video. If you go down there, you'll find that there's a lot of links to playlists, but there'll also be links to Google Docs. So the videos that were from Friday morning and afternoon, Saturday morning and afternoon, and they'll be under this one too. I'll put them under this one and the one this afternoon. Okay, well, if nobody has any preference, maybe we'll just talk about the communist takeover. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. Well, actually, I meant a liar. You should never take my words for anything. You should always do your own research. I've provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to any ideas. Anybody have any questions, just ask in the comments, and I'll check the comments periodically and try and answer any questions you might have. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who lit their beds at night to shoot at the pigs. And that's true. That's true. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. If you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government's not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like a fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. That's why they bought the media. They don't want you to be informed. An informed citizenry is at the heart of a dynamic democracy. Educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. I think, in my opinion, I think that's Trump's major legacy, is that there's a lot of stuff that came out during the Trump administration that was exposed, and I think that it continues to be exposed. If once the people become inattentive to the public affairs, you and I and Congress and the assemblies, judges and governors shall all become wolves. It seems to be the law of our general nature in spite of individual exceptions. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. And actually, a lot of that is talked about in the Law of Nations. So right now we're in the middle of a communist takeover. A lot of the stuff has already been happened. These are the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, and we're going to go through each one of them. A lot of those things are in place. And now they're just, they want to kill off a bunch of us, want to reduce the population. And these plagues is a good example, in my opinion. Of course, we all have to come to our own decision about whether what we're going to believe is true or not. And but I think that it's an advanced phase of a communist takeover. If you read my book about Trump, I go through the deep state and who they are. And I think the Chinese actually are the real enemy. I think that, well, there was a YouTube video about a year ago where some guy was on the highway in Mexico and needed to have a potty break, so he pulled over and went off into the trees, and there was a bunch of Chinese tanks in the trees, and now there's a friend of mine that lives in Canada. Like, you're right, I grew up in Canada. I have friends in Canada. Anyways, there's a friend of mine that lives in BC, and her aunt lives in Kingston, Ontario. And her aunt told her, and so I consider this very credible. Her aunt told her that there was thousands of U.S. troops in Kingston, Ontario. Kingston, Ontario is a big Canadian military base. And so, according to her aunt, there was thousands of U.S. troops, hundreds of flights coming in and out of there, U.S. flights, and thousands of U.S. troops there. And now, that was during when Trump was in office, so that was a few months ago. But it's also well known that the Chinese have thousands of troops in Canada. You know, they're talking about invading. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Cliff High, in his videos, if you watch his videos, and I think he's right. He says that the Chinese are going to invade, and he says that they've never faced an armed populace, and he says that we're a bunch of gnarly old bastards, and we don't particularly like our government, and we're armed. I mean, if you look at the statistics, there's more arms in the hands of Americans than there is in the hands of any army on the planet. So, anyways, we'll see, I guess. I certainly hope that that's not our destiny, but, you know, whatever our destiny is our destiny. I guess we'll find out soon enough. Anyways, the communist takeover. So there's the first one is abolition of private property and land and application of all rents of land to public purpose. So actually, are you paying an annual rent in the form of property taxes? Because if you pay an annual rent in the form of property taxes, then you don't own that land. And if you don't pay that annual rent, what do? they do an unlawful detainer action, which is for renters. So, do you own your land? I know I own my land, but do you own yours? If you know the law, you can have absolute title. I talk about that in my videos. But if you don't know the law, again, it comes down to these, it's all tied to these Federal Reserve notes, this fake money. And because you don't pay for anything with the Federal Reserve note, you participate in the privilege of discharging debt with limited liability. And so if these bought and paid for whores masquerading as judges, these bar member scum, can presume that you use Federal Reserve notes, then you didn't pay for it, and therefore it's not yours. You discharge debt with limited liability. Anyways, the second one is a heavy progressive and graduated income tax. Now, you're still a taxpayer? You know, I actually sued the IRS back in 2007, took them to the Supreme Court, and then a few years later I sued them again, took them to the Supreme Court. And they don't want to talk to me now. It's amazing how that works. The American National Passport, you know, actually, we in the Republic of Texas would like to have our own passport, and so I'm not sure. You know, it's hard to say. I haven't applied for a passport in a long time, and I'm not sure that I want to apply for one. I've actually, Cliff High in his data sets, he says that when Americans go overseas with a U.S. passport, that they're not going to honor them at some point because they're going to be pissed at us, and they're going to figure that you get what you deserve, and so they're not going to honor our passports, you know. So I'm not sure, you know, I don't know. Cliff High talks about that. It's in his data sets. He doesn't know when, but you know, I guess we'll see. I think we're in for some tough times. I guess we'll see. I think all judges know about it. All lawyers know about it. The only lawyers that wouldn't know about it would be the ones in law school, and they haven't had their training yet. But it doesn't take long, and they learn that stuff. And there's also where they talk among each other and all the rest of it. And so, you know, my attitude is that they're required to know. Okay, and so I don't have any compassion for them at all. Quite frankly, if it was up to me, and I'm glad it's not up to me, because there'd be lawyers swinging by their necks from light poles all over the place. So, anyways, for what that's worth, I'm glad it's not up to me. I'd rather, you know, have it up to a common law jury, you know. And anyways, so heavily graduated progressive and graduated income tax. Well, we all know that's in place. Abolition of all rights of inheritance. You know, that kind of comes and goes. The communists are in power now, and so, you know, under Trump, then basically all of that stuff, a lot of that stuff got reversed. But with the communists in power, I guess we'll see. I expect, you know, the dozens of executive orders that Satanist Biden went and signed when he first got into his so-called office. I don't know how many of those undid what Trump did in relation to that. I mean, there was dozens of them, and so who knows? Who knows what the results are? Confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. Well, Um, that's what the war on terror is all about, quite frankly. Um, they make it so you can't get a job. Um, and they just make it up, But they haven't actually been too flagrant about that. So, matter of fact, I don't think that the Constitution specifically prohibits them from doing that. But uh, so so, but I know lots of people that have had their vehicles seized by the pigs, and then you have to pay to get them back, or they never get them back. There's lots of people that haven't got them back yet. Don't get me going. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. Well, that's certainly in place. The Federal Reserve Bank is private. The Treasury Department is owned by the International Monetary Fund. That's certainly in place. Centralization of the means of communication and transportation. Well, there's the transportation in the hands of the state. There's the Federal Communications Commission. There's the Federal Aviation Administration. There's the Department of Transportation. And there's the Interstate Commerce Commission, although that's more like business. But the other two certainly, and if you think the Department of Transportation, you have a state Department of Transportation. You don't think that's a subsidiary of the Federal Department of Transportation? Of course it is. So the state police are really federal. Don't get me going. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, the bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil, generally in accordance with a common plan. Well, there's the Department of Agriculture, the Department of the Interior, Environmental Protection Agency, National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Mines, Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, and if you're subject to regulation, then you're property of the United States by definition. And so any of these corporations, they do their payroll pursuant to the Code of Federal Regulations. They do all of it. And if they are subject to regulation, they're property of the United States. So I would say that's certainly a lot of that is implemented. Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. And that's Article 4, Section 2. And the same thing works the same way in Canada. Okay, and Canada is much more communist than here. And Canada owned under the Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. It says owned means subject to the regulations. So if you're subject to the regulations, you're owned. And every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agent of Her Majesty and Right of Canada. And that's the Government Corporation Operation Act of Canada. So again, that's a lot of that stuff is in place. Equal obligation of all to work, establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. Well, there's actually the Department of Labor and the Federal Public Works Program, and they're trying to what they want to make universal compensation, where everybody gets paid universal minimum wage, where everybody gets paid no matter whether they work or not. And there's a bunch of stuff these communists are working on, and so some of that's in place, some of it's not. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country. Super corporate farms turn cities into demilitarized zones, and I think maybe that's coming. If there's a lot of rumors going around about these vaccinations and all that stuff, and Cliff High in his data set shows that the cities are going to be not very good places to be. You know, people are already moving out of the cities into the country. I'd really like to get into the country. I've already got land. I just need to, build something on it so that I can live there. And so there's certainly um, that might be in the works right now. That might be in the works. What I'd like to do, I've always wanted to do, quite frankly, is I do aerospace engineering consulting. I've always wanted to get 160 acres or a section and put a wall around it and kind of make it so that it's dependable, sort of thing. Have a wall and have it all secure and everything, and then basically um, um, bring some like-minded people in there and give them a job making sub-assemblies for airplanes and sell them to Boeing or something like that, and so then we could have our own little community and make it all be where we're getting paid in lawful money and kind of like separate from everything, a little refuge. Anyways, that's what I've always wanted to do. I think I'm going to be able to do it here before too long, but I got to wait till these silver pops and cryptos start going up some more. Communist takeover in 1933. Hitler appointed Hermann Goering Minister of the Interior. His first orders was to defund and eliminate police departments so they would not interfere with the brown shirts, whose mission it was to riot, burn, beat up, and kill citizens in an effort to sway elections. Yep. Number 10, free education for all children in government schools, abolition of children's factory labor at its present form, combination of education with industrial production. Well, there's certainly free education for all children in government schools. Now, they haven't got child labor in factories or anything like that. I don't see that happening anytime soon. So some of this stuff is completely in place, and some of it is it's hard to say whether like this child labor in factories, that could happen pretty fast. And some of it is like in the works. You can see it getting ready to happen. Now let's see if we've got any comments. Well, I see you guys are kind of talking amongst each other, but and that's fine. Okay, well, let's just keep going here. The first step is to dumb the people down, and they've changed the schools into indoctrination camps. That's the reason that all of this hysteria over this recent pandemic that's got like next to no mortality rate. Anyways, they've changed the schools into indoctrination camps, the Department of Education, and they're putting fluoride in the water, okay? And fluoride is meant to dumb people down. Ours may become the first civilization destroyed not by the power of our enemies, but by the ignorance of our teachers and the dangerous nonsense they're teaching our children. And ain't that the truth? And the fluoride in the water comes from an hydrofluorosilicic acid, a toxic waste from industry. This has never once been tested for safety. It's banned in 98% of Europe. Yeah, no doubt. Fluoride is poison on tap. Fluoride's side effects is cancer, brain damage in unborn fetus, bone weakness, dental fluorosis, low estrogen and testosterone levels, damages stomach, joint problems, skeletal fluorosis, osteoporosis, and accelerates osteoporosis. Osteoarthritis and accelerates osteoporosis. Lowers IQ, memory loss, lack of motivation, apathy, and passivity. They used it in the concentration camps in the Second World War to keep people docile, right? Apathy and passivity inhibits melatonin production, impairs the immune system, attacks your pineal gland, kidney stones and kidney failure, interferes with white blood cell production, kills brain cells, makes you dumb, lowers sex drive, infertility, sedative, accelerates the aging process, attacks thyroid, attacks hypothalamus, shortens lifespan, promotes mental disturbances, receding gums, affects heart circulation, makes you docile and obescent, autism, DNA damage, Alzheimer's disease. And I mean, it's well documented. They use it in concentration camps during the Second World War. Fluoride, and matter of fact, what they say is Alzheimer's is fluoride facilitates Alzheimer's to make it happen. Fluoride makes your body absorb extra aluminum. Where does the aluminum go? Your brain. And what metal shows up alarmingly in brains of Alzheimer's victims? You guessed it, fluoride. Aluminum in brain, just. Fluoride's not a metal. Anyways, so step 2 of the communist takeover, get you people used to being slaves, issue executive orders like dictators do, military police, get people used to theft and not really owning things, make them put their shoulder to that grindstone, make sure that they have to live day to day and don't have 2 nickels to rub together to last them on over a difficult day or something. Governors like Abbott are issuing their edicts under military dictatorship to ensure their property, you, is safe. That's what it is. Recall Abbott. Executive orders are not law. Executive orders are color of law. Executive orders are equivalent to regulations. Regulations are for government property. Color of law. Color means an appearance, a semblance, a simulacrum, as distinguished from that which is real. It's a lie. A prima facie or apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible assumed exterior concealing a lack of reality, disguise, or pretext. Colorable means that which is in appearance only, not in reality or what it purports to be, hence counterfeit, feigned, having the appearance of truth. Color of law means the appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right, misuse of power possessed by virtue of state law, and made possible only because wrongdoers clothed with authority of state is action taken under color of law. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in a catalog of controversies over which Congress can give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally covers those citizens, even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, 1948, U.S. Supreme Court. International law rule. Adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction, federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only statutory, but the common law of state. State and federal venue discussed. Civil law is effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction or federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws. And a cause arising under such laws may be brought in and removed to federal district court under sections 1331 and 1441 of 28 U.S.C. And that's taken from Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President June 1957, pages 158 to 165. There's a guy in my group that points out Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, that says that the District of Columbia is limited to 10 square miles over there between Virginia and Maryland. And he says he basically deals with any ticket by saying that he's a state national and mentions Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and dismiss this. Actually, it's vacate this citation, and the problem goes away. But really, anytime you get anything, you're dealing with anything from the government, there's an attorney behind it, okay? And so file bar grievances against the attorney. Find out who the attorney is, file bar grievances against them. And a lot of your problems will go away. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. And that's U.S. Supreme Court. Forced loans is taken directly from the Lieber Code. Okay, so the martial law. It's all about martial law. They're bar members and they're presuming that you're a corporation, but that's why you file bar complaints, because that's perjury of oath. The supreme law of the land says that you can do all sorts of things without causing injury. That's why I like bar grievances. I really do, I'll tell you. Technically, you shouldn't have to have any sort of ID. ID is for slaves. You can have credentials. But even then, inside, unless they stop you, they got nothing to say. I got stopped by Maryland when I was coming here to Ocean City, and I was doing 89 and a 65. And so I told them I'm a protected person under international law. And they went and talked about it and came back to my car, and they said, well, that stuff doesn't work, hasn't worked since the 70s, but we're just giving you a warning. So they gave me a warning. I was doing 89 and a 65. Anyways, this is the Libra Code. Article 1. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation and conquest. The presence of the hostile army proclaims its martial law. The Libra Code, that's General Orders 100. Article 1. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation, but by special proclamation ordered by the Commander-in-Chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war, when the occupation of the place or territory continues beyond the conclusion of peace as one of the conditions of the same. So, everybody knows there was a civil war. All those southern states, there is no Treaty of Peace, and there's been no special proclamations either. And so the martial law still continues to this day. And there's the war with Mexico in the 1840s. There was a Treaty of Peace there, but there's no special mention in the Treaty of Peace about ending the martial law. Has to be a special mention. And there's been no proclamations. I've never seen a proclamation, and I've read a lot of treaties, and I've never seen anything in the treaty about ending the martial law. I mean, the War of Independence is a good example, another good example. And anyways, martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes, whether imposed by the expelled government or the invader. Refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. They want you to be safe. They got to have you safe. That's what all this medical dictatorship is all about. They want you to be safe. That's Article 10 of the Libra Code. They want you to be safe. You got to be safe. This is all a military dictatorship. You got to be safe. Oh, look at that. That's the New World slave flag. They want you to be safe. Sesticate Trust is a fraud. It's created by the Roman cult, and I would not participate or acknowledge it at all, except to say that they're assaulting me with it. And if you participate in the fraud, you put yourself in international law, and now you're dealing with thieves. There's a maximum. There's a Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, says Roman law, Roman civil law, and civil law are convertible phrases and mean municipal law. And there's a maxim of Roman law that says, let he who is willing to be deceived be deceived. So they lie, they cheat, they steal, they do all that stuff. And so they're Satanists. Over 1,000 years ago, Arabs discovered that forcing people to cover their nose and mouths broke their will and individuality and depersonalized them, made them submissive. That's why they imposed on every woman the mandatory use of fabric over her face. Then Islam turned it into the woman's symbol of submission to Allah, the man owner of the harem and king. Modern psychology explains it without a face. We don't exist as independent beings. The child looks in the mirror between the ages of 2 and 3 and is discovered as an independent being. The mask is the beginning of deleting individuality. So there's 3 kinds of martial law. There's full martial law, there's martial law proper, and there's martial law rule. Full martial law, declaration of martial law is issued. Troops are put on the streets, used only during wartime, used in a foreign country or when actually invaded by a foreign power to put down an armed rebellion. Martial law proper is the law of the armed forces. When a captain tells a private what to do, is enforced by court-martial. Martial law rule is the law of necessity and emergency, and allows the domestic use of martial law powers used during peace times, and it can continue for centuries during a military occupation. And that's taken from Ex parte Milligan, U.S. Supreme Court during Civil War, and it's cited in the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. My new book is now available, Trump, a True American Patriot or Not. It's about the deep state and who they are and how they got there and where they came from. Did you know there's two national governments? There's actually a Supreme Court case that talks about it. Downs versus Bidwell said there's two national governments. One operates within the Constitution, the other one does not. So, and if you look if you look in the Articles of Confederation, in Article 1, it says the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. And you'll see that on land patents and Federal Reserve notes. That's the only place that I've been able to see that, or Treasury notes. Silver certificates, that kind of stuff. So what happened is in 1861, the Southern states walked out of Congress. They ceased to have a quorum. Lincoln ordered them back under executive authority, and they've been operating under executive authority ever since. And so, and now all those people are dead, so they can't even reconvene it if they wanted to. So then what happened is in 1933, that unconstitutional corporation went bankrupt. And when any corporation gets bankrupt, the creditors seize the corporation. So we have, if you look at the speaker's podium in the U.S. House of Representatives, you'll see who owns Congress. That's why Pelosi has to get up there and say, we can't read this bill until after we pass it. So it's the Roman cult that owns Congress, and there's two Roman fasci on each side of the speaker's podium, and there's a Roman spear that's planted on all conquered nations. Now, this is, I didn't write this. This is the back of the book. I didn't write it, but I think it really fits. And if you read down here at the bottom, it says, does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? And Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. And that's the truth. I'll tell you, they hit the nail on the head there. So you can order the book from Amazon or from my website. It's $30 plus shipping. If you order the book from my website, it's sovereigntyinternational.fyi. Amazon does not provide autographed books. If you want the book autographed, order the book from my website. But don't forget to let me know if you have something particular you want the autograph to say. Do you want to know the origins of the deep state? Who's behind it? Do you want to know why it's called the Trump administration? You want to know what an administration is? One of the things that they taught me, I do aerospace engineering consulting. I helped design the hydraulic system on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. And one of the things they always wanted me to do was to support everything that I did. And so this book is full of all sorts of court citations, law dictionary definitions, international treaties, all sorts of stuff. And so there's really very little in there that I say that's my opinion, although there is a few things, but most of it is supported by all sorts of authorities. But I don't know, have you ever heard of, remember Howard Hughes, how he was hiding out all the time? It's my opinion, I don't know, I can't prove it. It's my opinion that all these billionaires, once they get to be billionaires, are approached by the New World Order crowd, and they tell them, look, you're going to go along with our program or you're going to turn up dead. And I think the reason Howard Hughes was hiding out all the time is because he didn't want to go along with their program. He was worried about being poisoned. He was careful who he had for surrounding him, all sorts of stuff. And I think that the same thing happened with Trump. As a matter of fact, there was a helicopter crash in 1984, and there's 3 of his executives got killed, and he was supposed to have been on that flight. And he canceled out at the last minute. And so I think he knows exactly what the issues are. I I do aerospace engineering consulting, and I so happen to know a little bit about helicopters. And helicopters crash for a lot of reasons, but they don't crash for rotor blades coming off, which is what happened that caused his helicopter to crash. And that is not one of the reasons that helicopters crash. So, anyways, the I think Trump knows what the issues are. Have you ever heard of Jerome Corsi? Jerome Corsi he was actually indicted during the Mueller investigation for lying to the FBI. And his wife told him she'd rather visit him in jail than have him plea bargain to something that he didn't do. And so he refused to plea bargain it. He's got like a PhD in political science. He's written a bunch of books. He's got a website. He's got a YouTube channel. There's a YouTube video where he says that in 2015 he was visited by 5 generals, and they told him that they told him that there was a group of generals in the Pentagon that were going to overthrow Obama. And he said, well, you can do that if you want, but you might want to go talk to Donald Trump first. And so 3 months later, he gets a phone call, and they decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed to run for president. And so, in my opinion, okay, again, I can't prove it, but in my opinion, I think that the entire Trump presidency was a giant military psyop. Did you know they have a war college in the Pentagon? They do. If you look at any officer's resume, you'll see that he'll have something about the war college on it. They study warfare, and that's what they should be doing, actually. But the most important part of warfare is, why did an inferior force defeat a superior force? That's the real question. And again, that's why I think that the last 4 years, and it's still going on, I think it's still happening. There's a giant military psyop going on, and I've heard. Well, people have told me that they even saw there was people from the Pentagon that were in Congress, and Congress was trying to get information from them. They wouldn't tell them anything. And there's people. There's a lot of stuff that where I've heard that the Biden administration went to the Pentagon to get information on troop movements, and they told them to buzz off and don't come back. And I've heard that Biden doesn't have access to Air Force One. I think, and again, I don't know, but I think that scene where he was tripping on the stairs going up to Air Force One, I think that was a movie set. And I think the stairs were not proper, and that's why he was tripping. Anyways, so that's how Trump got to be president anyways, if you want to believe it. Do you want to know who owns Congress? I think we talked about that already. Do you not want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? Do you want to know how you have become a slave? It's all the Roman cult, these Satanists. Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's in the book. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their international trip? It's in the book. In reality, they're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way. Congress converted citizenship into the opposite of what the founders intended, to enslave everybody. Congress gave governments permission to screen for low intelligence for their code enforcers. Congress granted plausible deniability to their order followers so they can rape, pillage, and murder as much as they like and then claim good faith immunity. Congress mandated fluoride in the drinking water to dumb people down for their concentration camps. Congress created the Roman cult Sestake Trust as a mechanism to enslave everybody, collateralize their so-called debt, and sell everybody into slavery. Congress mandated everybody register their births to compel everybody into their slavery system. Congress created administrative law based on fraudulent, fictitious contracts as a mechanism of slavery. You volunteered. Congress created all sorts of provisions to facilitate their military dictatorship and their slavery agenda. Congress gave the president the power to make war without congressional approval as a mechanism of slavery all over the planet. Congress mandating their so-called real ID for their slaves to fabricate evidence of their slaves for their bar members' presumptions. That's why you file bar member grievances. Should just be a normal course of action. Congress has given pharmaceutical companies immunity for their poisonous vaccines. Congress has authorized naked short selling on Wall Street. A society whose citizens refuse to see and investigate the facts, who refuse to believe that their government and their media will routinely lie to them and fabricate a reality contrary to verifiable facts, is a society that chooses and deserves the police state is going to get. Yeah, that's probably true. Although that is a Satanist philosophy, too. There's a whole bunch of United States corporations. These two that I talk about in this video are the ones that I can prove, but there's good reason to believe there's a lot more. Yeah, sorcery and pharmakeos are both like synonyms. Let him who wishes to be deceived be deceived. That's a Roman law maxim. Thou shalt not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way. When the rights of the least of us are violated, we're all diminished. And that's all Satanism. That's all Satanism. That's this, let he who wishes to be deceived be deceived. That's the Roman cult, and it's Satanism. You are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he's a liar and the father of it. But the fearful and the unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers, which is the pharmaceutical drug pushers, and the idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Some corporations claim they can refuse service if you do not wear a face mask. Are these corporations subject to regulations? Of course they are. Then all corporations are property of the government. When you incorporate into the government. Article 1. No, it's not Article 1. It's Article 4, Section 4. No, Section 3. It says Congress shall have power to make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory and other property of the United States. So if you're subject to regulations, you're property of the United States. Martial law is the public law of necessity. Necessity calls it forth. Necessity justifies its exercise. Necessity measures the extent and degree to which it may be employed. That necessity is no formal, artificial, legalistic concept, but an actual and factual one. It is the necessity of taking action to safeguard the state against insurrection, riot, disorder, or public calamity. What constitutes necessity is a question of fact for each case. And that's taken from Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. Well said. The action of Congress and the passage of the first Legal Tender Act was placed distinctly upon the ground of the existing imperative need of government, and the Legal Tender Clause was urged and adopted as a war measure. And that's Juilliard versus Greenman, U.S. Supreme Court. Money means a medium of exchange. This is Texas Business and Commerce Code. That's international law. Money means a medium of exchange currently authorized or adopted by a domestic or foreign government. The term includes a monetary unit of account established by an intergovernmental organization or by agreement between two or more countries. So that's international law. That's the Uniform Commercial Code. They redefine money. Okay, moving along. Party, as distinguished from third party, means person is engaged in a transaction. Okay, so that's business, that's commerce, that's under the international law and Uniform Commercial Code. All of these courts operate under the Uniform Commercial Code. International law is not sovereign. Governments descend to the level of a mere private corporation and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen where private corporate commercial paper and securities is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. That's Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, or you could also call it the Clearfield Doctrine. Governments lose their immunity and descend to the level of private corporations when involved in commercial activity, enforcing negotiable instruments, as in fines, penalties, assessments, bails, taxes. Remedy lies in the hands of the state and its municipalities seeking remedy. Congress, claiming its martial law power to declare war, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, imposed martial law in the United States and never discontinued it. The result was an extension of military and municipal jurisdiction of Congress. But where's the evidence of this? Look at the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Acts, the legal tender laws, the 14th Amendment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellard of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. And I highly recommend everybody should get that document. I've got it on my website. It's not very long. It's 150 pages, but it's double spaced. So it's a quick, easy read. It's got a wealth of information in there. The 14th Amendment is an extension of national military powers presently used in a municipal character and enforced by municipal laws stretch far beyond their original limitations and enforced by Article 1 tribunals. And that's, again, the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellard of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. And this is the causes and necessities for taking up arms. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits, for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. And that's despotism as in a dictatorship. And so that's why you don't want to acknowledge the birth certificate. You don't want to certify it. You don't want to do any of that stuff. The minute you introduce that as evidence in any case, you're going into international law. Martial law is international law. So when you do that, you just walked away from common law, and your pleadings determine the kind of case you're going to get. And what you say is going to determine what's going to happen. And so you have to be careful what you say. I would not admit that. If anything, I say you're assaulting me with your Roman cult Sestake trust, and it's theirs, it's not mine. And it's a dictatorship. And so you have to do it right. And if you do it right, you can be successful. But you cannot acknowledge that birth certificate. That thing is a fraud. And if you do or talk about it in anything as in the fact that it's a fraud, then you go into international law, and you just walked away from common law by doing that. Rebellion against tyrants is obedience to God. The refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system, which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators, was probably the prime cause of the revolution. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent YouTube videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information, shares a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the fake money, the IOUs, the military script, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. Now, that is all in there for a very specific reason, because remember, the taxes are for the privilege of discharging debt with limited liability. And so what I'm saying there is, that's not a privilege. I don't want your discharge. You can put it up your rectal orifice. I just want lawful money. And since most people don't have it, I can accept the fake money. But that's what it is fake money. And it's not a privilege. Section 15, as used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. And that's the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, located at 48 Stat 337. And so what that's essentially saying is that Federal Reserve notes are meant for internal use of the government only. That's another reason you file bar grievances against these bar member scum, right? Perjury of oath. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons they're perjuring their oath, but one of them is they're demanding Federal Reserve notes. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. Federal Reserve notes are a forced loan. Federal Reserve notes are IOUs. All commercial paper falls into two categories. It's either a promissory note or an IOU. A requirement for a promissory note is a promise to pay. Promissory note has to have a promise to pay. Gold certificates and silver certificates were promissory notes. You can never pay a debt with the Federal Reserve note. It's impossible to pay anything with the Federal Reserve note. The absolute best you can do is discharge debt with limited liability. That's a privilege. Check out my other videos. Banks Are Thieves playlist, Roman cult playlist, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 through 7, do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial law is here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself free mail, do-it-yourself kangaroo courts, Canada Border Pigs playlist, bar members and their Satanic Connection playlist. Equity, what happens? Remember, under martial law, common law disappears. Equity is supposed to follow equity. It talks about that in that non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett, and he says that when equity is supposed to follow common law, when you have martial law, it supersedes and replaces common law, and so then equity can do literally anything it wants. So you say equity is superior to common law, you don't have a clue, because under that system, equity can do anything it wants. And so then that bought and paid for whore over there can just do anything he wants. And they tell you that in there all the time. And equity can do anything it wants because everything's under martial law. Keep moving here. This is General Orders 100, Article 37. We talked about this earlier. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans, to billet soldiers, or to appropriate property, especially houses, lands, boats, ships, or churches for temporary and military uses. Now, if you think about it, now think about this, because that Juilliard versus Grievance said that they forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. And so think about that. So what happened is those forced loans were actually for their own troops. And they were because the banksters wanted to loan money at 25% to the government, and Lincoln didn't want to pay 25%. So they just issued treasury notes, which are forced loans. And so then the forced loans, you don't necessarily force the loans on the enemy. You can force the loans on, basically that means that the troops are the enemy, that your domestic people are the enemy. Everybody's the enemy under that system. Cryptocurrency is not a forced loan. Anything can be used as a means of exchange as long as we agree to it. It's called barter. Sovereignty International. My contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My Facebook community page is deleted. I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. I deleted it. My private group on Facebook called Sovereignty International is being deleted. It takes time to ban 17,000 people off your group. And, I haven't even been on Facebook for months, and I'm not interested in going there. So I have other people that are doing that stuff anyways. So my Yahoo private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. I've got a library profile, which is now, what's it called? It's called, starts with a C, I think. Anyways, I got that profile. Patreon, Sovereignty International. I got a MeWe group. Congress converted citizenship into the opposite of what the founders intended for the purpose of enslaving everybody. And this is Colgate versus Harvey, U.S. Supreme Court. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. So if you think about it, prior to the 14th Amendment, it was derivative and dependent upon citizenship. U.S. citizenship was derivative and dependent upon being a state citizen. And after the 14th Amendment, it was paramount dominant. So you didn't have to be a state citizen to be a U.S. citizen. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states, and that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Every taxpayer is assessed to K trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's a summary from Henry Boland's. Sad will be the day when the American people forget their traditions and their history and no longer remember that the country they love, the institutions they cherish, and the freedom they hope to preserve were born from the throes of armed resistance to tyranny and nursed in the rugged arms of fearless men. Roger Sherman, signer of the Declaration of Independence. Ain't that the truth? Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligations to pay income tax. Unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. An act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia at 31 Stat 1432. It says the legal estate to be the cestui jus. Okay, and so this is all coming from the Roman cult. Cestui trust. Been talking about that in the chat. I see that. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks. That's why you don't want equity, because it's all Roman cult, to be bound in conscience to account to a cestui jus for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. And that's codified at 15 U.S.C. Section 44. Corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And then it goes through the same definition, except it doesn't have shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. So that's the definition. So the Sestake Trust would fall under the definition of that without the shares of capital stock or certificates of interest. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting territory or other property belonging to the United States. I talked about this earlier, Article 4, Section 2. All law of nations is international law. Martial law is international law. Banks are international law. Warfare is international law. Uniform Commercial Code is international law. All codes, rules, and regulations fall under international law. Forced loans is probably the single most important thing for a military despotism. It makes it so the courts presume that you do not pay a debt. It makes everybody into paupers, and paupers have no rights except what they allow you to have. If all you have is Federal Reserve notes in your wallet, you're bankrupt. You have commercial paper from a bankrupt corporation. Gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of gentlemen, barter is the money of peasants, debt is the money of slaves. The Federal Reserve was set up under the insurance laws of the United States. Federal Reserve notes are worthless insurance script. Anything purchased with worthless insurance script is the property of the issuer of the script. Taxes are the fee for using the private money system. The single most important requirement for a Republican form of government is lawful money. Federal Reserve notes are fake money. Lawful money is not Federal Reserve notes. Lawful money is not bank notes. Lawful money is not forced loans. Lawful money is not discharged debts. Lawful money is not international law. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Therefore, non-resistance to tyrants is obedience to Satan. That is very true. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Actually, I got to delete that. Twitter's deleted my account or shut it down. So we'll just do this right now. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget on YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. And there is front page of my YouTube channel. The subscribe button's already clicked. The arrow's pointing at the bell. The bell has not been clicked. It will look like it's vibrating. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety and circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. Safety, there's that word safety again. That's 8 Attorney General's opinion. 365 and 367, February 3rd, 1857. That's why they had to pass statutes for common law offenses. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law. That's right. There's no law at all, so they set it all aside, so they ignore everything, and then they have to write down, they have to make statutes for everything. All statutes are edicts under martial law, and they have to make statutes for common law offense. That's why they make literally millions of codes, rules, and regulations. And if you don't know some obscure code, rule, or regulation, then they're going to abuse you over it. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They would be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. Again, that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett in the case Utah Supreme Court. And that book is full of all sorts of good information. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. Legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. Under a military dictatorship, there's no law. That's why they're required to pass statutes. For common law crimes like murder and assault. This creates civil law, which creates a democracy. Under a military dictatorship, you have a democracy. Democracy is international law. I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. The website has 2 subscription levels, and I accept cryptocurrencies. The basic subscription level is $29.99 a year for the videos only. The advanced subscription level is for videos plus unlimited consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. But I can tell you what I would do and where to find forums. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. Some of my exclusive content is Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training, Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice and Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third-Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training, Revocation of Voter Registration, Criminal Complaint Training, and there's actually several of those. Lawsuit Training, there's one of those. There's going to be more other training requests depending on whether I can do it and whether it's suitable for this. And then I also have Northeast Private Information Share videos. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked on my videos and on my website. All exclusive content will be available on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. And my Patreon is Sovereignty International. Congress created a military dictatorship, which is a democracy. They've been telling people for decades that we're in a democracy. Do you think this is an accident? I'm sick of YouTube and Google censorship. Over the next few months, I am actually moving away from YouTube and Google. I've already dumped Chrome for Brave. I'm moving my videos over to Library. All my videos are actually on Library. And I've also got some videos at Rumble. I don't have too many, but and that's a work in progress. And then there's my book, which we already talked about. And if you want us, in reality, they're not after me; they're after you. I'm just in the way. And if you want a autographed version of the book, contact me or on my website. It's available on my website, www.sovereigntyinternational.fyi, or you can send me an email. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising their revenue on His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America is found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no shit, Batman, that from and after the passing of this act, the King in Great Britain, Parliament of Great Britain, will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment, whatever, payable in any of the colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America or the West Indies, except only such duties as may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. That's George the Third, Chapter 12, 1778. So that whore, that Satanist thief, went in 2 years after the Declaration of Independence, they passed this. And so it's like closing the barn door after the horses get out. Taxes caused the War of Independence. If they can tax you, then you are their slave. You're forced to work for them for nothing. It's becoming more and more difficult to be free. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or permission. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, McCullough versus Maryland, 1819. A subject is a slave. Taxation is forced to work for nothing. A tax is an impost, a tribute imposed on the subject. An excise, a tallage. In public law, taxation signifies the system for raising money for public purposes by compelling the payment by individuals of sums of money called taxes. Some general principles of taxation have been said to be that subjects of every state ought to contribute to the support of the government as nearly as possible in proportion to their respective abilities, that is, in proportion to the revenue which they respectively enjoy under the protection of the state. In the observation or neglect of this maxim consists of what is called equality or inequality of taxation. This is taken from the Dictionary of English Law, Sweet and Maxwell, London, 1959. Well, there are some similar slides in this one as there were in the one yesterday. That's true. There's always going to be similar slides in one or the next one. That's true. There'll always be. So if you're wondering, it's similar. But it's also true that they jammed up our signal yesterday because we exceeded the truth limit. Well said there, slick dissident. There's two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword, the other is by debt. When acting to enforce a statute and subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge in municipal court is acting as an administrative officer, not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating and enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only as a bought and paid for clerk, not in a discretionary capacity. That's why you go after the lawyer, okay? Bar complaints. You file bar complaints because that's really the guy that's the enemy. The judge is sitting there playing stupid. And so the bar member, the prosecutor, and his boss and his boss's boss are the ones you go after. I file bar complaints against the prosecutor, against it's usually like an assistant. Like if it's a city, okay, you have the prosecutor, and then you might have a head prosecutor if it's a big city, and then you also will probably have a city attorney. Go after them too. File bar complaints against all of them. And if it's a law firm that's providing the city attorney and the prosecutor, well, then you go to find out the name of the law firm, and you go to their website and you find out who the partners are, and you file bar complaints against the partners. And you just you want to invite everybody to the party. It's the accepted rule, not only in state courts, but in the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a ministerial court for an agency. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as mere clerks of the involved agency. Bought and paid for clerks. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. So that bought and paid for whore up there that's masquerading as a judge has no authority to issue a warrant or anything. And they're incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. That's why they issue a capias, which is a fake warrant. And that's why you got to go after them. There is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Saya. And that is, they're citing 10 Coke 68, which is Coke in the 1500s, but it's being cited by Bradley versus Fisher. That's the U.S. Supreme Court. And it's cited in a federal court case, Manning versus Ketchum. So these Congress tyranny, military dictatorship, bar members. Judge wears a military uniform. Judge sits there and plays stupid. If you fail or to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. That's exactly what they do. Everything is a fraud and a nullity. Oh, look, there's a kangaroo court. Judge works for the state, prosecutor works for the state, the pig works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, and the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or actus reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. This is the guy you go after. You file a bar complaint against him too. He's a bar member. File bar complaints against them all. But in fact and in law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in this state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution and the so-called 14th Amendment. And that's a summary. I doubt the Supreme Court said that. That's a summary of United States versus United Mine Workers, 1947. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude as punishment, except as punishment for crime whereof a party shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So they sell you for slavery. They sell you. They make up some fictitious crime and sell you into slavery. That's easy. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is for the time being a slave of the state. That's right. It's all about slavery. So the 13th Amendment didn't free the slaves. It made it possible so they could enslave everybody. That's why they got the prisons all populated. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren or the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. These people should be put to death. Okay? This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So the Article 6, Clause 2 is the whole Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and I don't care what your state codes say. We can have a benevolent dictator or a tyrant dictator. Obama was a textbook tyrant. Pelosi gets up and tells the House, we can't read this bill until after we approve it. Lindsey Williams said that God intervened when Trump was elected. I don't think he intervened in the next one, the one that just happened. We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert the Constitution. When the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the losers. A racist is someone who wins an argument against a liberal. Tyranny is defined as that which is legal for the government, but illegal for the citizens. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. That's right. That's right. That's why we're supposed to have arms. That's in my nastygrams. We're going to be talking about that next week. The Constitution is not a document for the government to restrain the people. It's an instrument for the people to restrain the government. So we have all sorts of tyrants running around today. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We have governor tyrants. We have Congress tyrants. We have county commissioner tyrants. We have city tyrants. We have county sheriff tyrants. And we have judicial tyrants. Today is the unborn child. Tomorrow it's likely to be the elder of those who are incurably ill. Who knows, but that a little later it may be anyone who has a political or moral views do not fit into the distorted new order. Well said. That's these communists. This is a communist takeover we're undergoing right now. It's not murder. Jews aren't actually people. It's not murder. Babies aren't actually people. Child sacrifice in 1515 is the same as child sacrifice in 2015. A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. If fascism ever comes to America, it will come in the name of liberalism. So it's time to get unplugged. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. All executive orders or regulations for property, just slaves of the government, and therefore a color of law. Color of law is something that looks like law but isn't. It's a felony to violate your rights under color of law. They can violate your rights as long as they can claim good faith. Oh, yeah, I didn't know. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were not one of the slaves. Tell them it's a felony and have witnesses. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. America needs God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. The New World Order will require that you worship the government. This is going on in China right now with the Falun Gong. They're doing their organ harvesting programs. This is Wikipedia on the Falun Gong. Falun Gong emerged towards the end of China's period, Qigong boom, a period that we saw proliferation of certain practices of meditation, slow-moving energy exercises, and regulated breathing. That's all they do. Falun Gong combines meditation and Qigong exercises with the moral philosophy. The practice emphasizes morality and the cultivation of virtue and identifies as a practice of the Buddhist school, though its teachings also incorporate elements drawn from Taoist traditions. Through moral rectitude and the practice of meditation, practitioners of Falun Gong aspire to eliminate attachments and ultimately to achieve spiritual enlightenment. The practice initially enjoyed support from Chinese officialdom, but by the mid-late 1990s, the government of China increasingly viewed Falun Gong as a potential threat due to its size, independence from the state, and spiritual teachings. By 1999, government estimates placed the number of Falun Gong practitioners at 70 million. Damn. During that time, negative coverage of Falun Gong began to appear in the state-run press, and practitioners usually responded by picketing the source involved. Most of the time, the practitioners succeeded, but controversy and tension continued to build. The scale of protests grew until April 1999, when over 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners gathered near the central government compound in Beijing to request legal recognition and freedom from state interference. This demonstration is widely seen as catalyzing the persecution that followed. So anyways, we all know what's happening with the Falun Gong. But they do breathing and they're harmless. But the communists are harvesting their organs, and that's coming here. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Under the New World Order, you either renounce any other god except government, or they'll try to kill you. In China, they're persecuting Christians, Falun Gong, and anyone that fails to worship the government. It's well known they are harvesting the organs of the Falun Gong. America needs God. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. It's a communist takeover. The communists have infiltrated America in a major way, and this is a communist war that's going on. We're at war. You have to understand, we are at war. The greatest tyrannies are always perpetrated in the name of the noblest causes. Oh, look at that. Karma, chameleon. Ben Garrison makes such good cartoons. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny and government. Well said. It's time to get unplugged, folks. We're in the final stages of communist takeover. We need to be prepared for anything. Remote viewers and futurists have said that there will be a point in time when there are riots in every major city and a great nation will disappear in one day. The Bible says in an hour. Then there will be wars between the states. Providence favors the prepared. Wondering why Antifa seems so familiar? Looks like the communists and the Nazis. Sure does, doesn't it? There's no difference between communism and socialism, except in the means of achieving the same ultimate end. Communism proposes to enslave men by force. Socialism is by vote. It's merely the difference between murder and suicide. It is the duty of the patriot to protect his country from its government. Okay, so that's the end of this presentation. I appreciate everybody watching. I think it's time to break for lunch. Please be thinking about what we want to talk about this afternoon. And if not, I'll have to come up with something. But I'm thinking maybe we could probably talk about the Law of Nations, or we could do citizenship or something like that too. So we'll see. We'll see when we come back. We're going to shut her down here till, let's see, it is in East, it's Eastern time. We're on Eastern time right now, so it's 5 minutes after 12. So we'll go to 1:30. 1:30, between 1:30 and 2 o'clock, we'll be back. And for the afternoon session, between 1:30 and 2 o'clock. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys then.